to start with Saudi Arabia and Aramco, the state-owned oil company. Second quarter profits there tumbling by more than a third from last year's record highs. Why? Well, two reasons: lower crude oil prices and thinner margins in refining oil. It did, however, raise its payout to shareholders with nearly $30 billion in a performance dividend. Well, we can speak now to our Middle East business correspondent, Samir Hashmi. Now, Samir, the Saudi state remains overwhelmingly Aramco's biggest shareholder. So I guess it's Saudi winning again here.
Well, that's right. I mean, the Saudi government owns around 90% of the company, and the dividend payout, the bulk of it will go to the Saudi government. And it's not a surprise, because if you look at Aramco, every quarter they've been paying about $19.8 billion as dividend. What they've done is this time that they have added another 50% to that amount in the form of this performance-linked dividend, which they say is because the cash flows were quite healthy, and that's the reason they decided to increase that overall dividend income, which will be definitely quite beneficial for the Saudi government, because it relies heavily on the Aramco, generating revenues for it. And that will help them in their oil diversification program. They're building these mega infrastructure projects, new tourist destinations. All this has been done keeping in mind that oil demand will decline in the decades to come, and they'll have to come up with new revenue streams. So when it comes to those projects, this income is quite critical.
Well, this is it. It's really interesting, isn't it? Because it's these oil profits being reinvested into green energy projects. They are a huge backer of green energy projects right across the world. They are, however, limiting supply. They're one of the countries in OPEC Plus, aren't they? And they are sort of limiting supply when it comes to oil. And they've been doing this since late last year. What is the rationale for that?
I think the Saudis are the leaders of OPEC Plus, which is the oil cartel, and they're also the largest exporters of oil in the world. About 10 million, their capacity is about 11 million barrels, or a little over that. Now, what the Saudis are seeing is that oil prices have been going down. They've been hovering around $75 for most of the year. For the Saudis to make money, to be able to break even, they need oil prices to be at about $80 to $85. And that's why they have voluntarily cut oil production by 1 billion barrels since July, because they want the oil supply to tighten a bit, which could prop up prices. And that's why they have gone ahead and extended those cuts, anticipating that prices may go up. Now, the reason behind that is because Saudis and OPEC and other international agencies expect oil demand to actually decline due to the economic headwinds and because of tightening monetary policy. This is having an impact on businesses across the globe. And the second reason is China. Now, China is the largest consumer of oil in the world. Now, many oil companies and oil exporters had expected that demand would really zoom in China once they open and the country post-COVID, but that hasn't really happened. The recovery hasn't been that swift, which is why there are concerns that oil demand could decline in the second half of the year.
And now lots of people around the world listening to this may not actually be familiar with Saudi Aramco. We're more familiar perhaps with companies such as Apple, such as Google, Meta, for example. But this is a huge, huge company that in fact dwarfs many of the better known companies around the world.
Well, that's right. Saudi Aramco is one of the largest publicly listed companies in the world. Its market value is in trillions, one of the few companies. And the reason is that it's the largest exporter of oil in the world. Saudi Arabia as a country sits on about 16 to 17% of oil reserves in the world. So that makes Saudis a very significant market when it comes to energy. And Saudi Aramco being the main national oil company, they are the ones who are exporting and pumping that oil. So that makes them one of the most significant companies in the world.
Thank you very much, Samir Hashmi, in the Middle East for us.